After being in hibernation for roughly 15 years, King of the Hill has returned, baby! Bobby still ain't quite right. Hank's urethra is as narrow as ever, and Peggy is here. While most revivals instills a sense of cynicism within me, I was very much looking forward to this one, mostly because of how much I watched this show growing up. It will forever remain my favorite animated sitcom. The Simpsons? Bro, your peak ended 30 years ago. Matt Groening allegedly got a foot massage from Virginia Roberts, a notable victim of Jeffrey Epstein, on Epstein's plane. By the way, Epstein still did not kill himself. Family Guy? Psh. Hasn't been funny since its second cancellation. Also, Seth MacFarlane got King of the Hill axed because Fox needed to open up a time slot for the Cleveland show, which nobody asked for. Fuck you, Seth! I finished watching season 14 of King of the Hill, which wasn't really difficult as seeing there's only 10 30-minute episodes in contrast with the average 20 or so episodes that the show used to get. I will say for the most part, it's solid. Now, it does take a few episodes for the show to get back into its groove. The first episode was probably the worst of the season given how disjointed it was, but that still doesn't mean it was a bad episode, and I understand that it was disjointed due to its primary focus being on showing viewers where most of the characters have been since the last time we saw them. Oh yeah, the show takes place 8 years in the future from last season. So Hank and Peggy are retired now. Honestly impressive since the show takes place less than a decade in the future, so these two would be retired while still in their 50s, I think. Bobby is off in Dallas doing his own thing, being the head chef and co-owner of a Robota fusion restaurant. Bill had become depression incarnate ever since Hank and Peggy left the US. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this, but the reason Hank was able to retire so early is due to the fact that he took a job working for Aramco in Saudi Arabia. I wouldn't think Hank would abandon the USA for a place so exotic, and also may or may not have played an integral role in 9/11. But I guess once he saw that Aramco bases for foreign workers are stuck in 1950s suburbia, he immediately folded. Now, there were some recasts, partly due to certain cast members no longer being with us, and partly because you can't really have a white guy portraying a Southeast Asian man these days without some backlash, which I mean, yeah, I get it. Of the recasts, I think Ty LeClaire is the most consistent as Joseph. Breckenmeyer provided Joseph's post-puberty voice, but did not return for season 14, so casting went with an actor who is actually of native heritage. His voice obviously isn't a replication of Meyer's performance, but I don't think LeClaire was going for that. He basically used his regular speaking voice, but nailed Joseph's personality. Joseph is an adult now, so he sounds more like, you know, an adult rather than a goblin whose voice still isn't quite there. He also isn't as stupid to the point you question if he needs to see a psychologist, but he's still not that bright. Toby Huss replaced Johnny Hardwick for roughly half of the season as Dale due to Hardwick's unfortunate passing during production. It's probably the most inconsistent vocal performance. You can tell at times when Toby was in the booth instead of Johnny, but I will say there were times I genuinely could not tell. I would say a huge complaint I have is the fact that Dale's way of speaking came off as a bit wooden at times, but it wasn't enough to diminish my entire experience. In turn, Huss was replaced as the voice of Khan by Ronnie Chang. Probably the most jarring change, I would say. Chang still has a pretty youthful voice, so hearing him provide vocals for a character that's approaching his 50s is a bit, I don't know, like Toby Huss sounded older in his performance as Khan, so hearing Khan's voice sort of regress, like as in terms of age, is kind of off, I guess. I will say Khan does feel more like a real person than a cartoon character, which for a show like King of the Hill, I guess you can't go wrong either way. I was also disappointed that Khan was only in one episode this season, mostly because I think he's one of the more interesting non-Hill characters of the show. Hopefully he will have more screen time in next season and Ronnie Chang can adjust more to the character. I don't think he was bad necessarily, but he seemed to miss out on the cadence that Toby Huss gave the character. Probably the last somewhat negative thing I can say about this season is that it focuses almost solely on the Hill Clan. Now, yeah, I understand their name is in the show, but it was nice to get episodes focused on other characters during the original run. It made the show feel more varied. That's probably the biggest thing missing from this season. Not a lot of spotlight on the side characters, which resulted in limited screen time for favorites such as John Redcorn. Rest in peace, Jonathan Joss. I'm pretty sure this was his last acting performance before he was tragically murdered earlier this year. I mean, Lucky and Luann aren't even mentioned. I understand both of their voice actors passed years before production on the season even began, but not even an update on where their characters are? I mean, Tom Petty's music is featured in the show, which I guess you can say is a tribute in its own right, but nothing for my girl Brittany? Seriously? Like, Luann carried some parts of the show. Like, come on, dude. Alright, now for the more good stuff, because the past few minutes have been criticism. The writing doesn't seem to fall into the over-reliance on current topics like most revivals do. Yeah, there's a few eye-roll jokes, sure, but it's not prevalent enough that it makes the show grating to watch. The editing is surprisingly well utilized for comedy. One of the bits that actually got me was a customer at Bobby's restaurant complaining about smelling burnt toast and Bobby telling him to see a doctor, only for the next cut to take us straight to the guy's funeral. That shit got me. Another, well, I guess depending on your perspective, decent part is that the writers seem to know how to use Gen Z slang. Stick with me now, please. So, in an episode that brings about the return of GH, Hank takes him to a manosphere boot camp, thinking it would be good for a teenager who lacks male guidance due to Cotton dying when GH was still only an infant. It's got its own Andrew Tate and everything. In this episode, terms like simp, beta, cuck, and soy boy are thrown around. While it was strange to hear this slang in a show like this, I appreciate the fact that the writers went onto Urban Dictionary for like a minute to at least know what the context these words are used in. However, the writers, they did fuck up. GH is supposed to be 13 in this episode, but the season only takes place 8 years from when the show last left off. Bobby is supposed to be 21 in season 14, meaning he was 8 when GH was born. But everyone knows that Bobby was 12 when GH was born, seeing as how there was an entire 2-part episode surrounding GH's birth, and Bobby had been 12 for like the previous 3 seasons. I think this was a season 4 episode, and Bobby was only 11 for a few episodes in season 1. So GH apparently aged like an additional 5 years rapidly while the show was off the air. Do better, writers, for fuck's sake. Now, despite that lore inconsistency, it was probably one of my favorite episodes of the season. Honestly, all the negative things I have to say about this season is nitpicky at worst. The season has the same vibe as its predecessors while avoiding the feeling of being a soulless cash grab. It really does appear like everyone involved enjoyed being back on this production. If you have Hulu and like the original series, I highly recommend this new season. It should be a baseline for how a revival is to be done. So anyways, I will see you all when I see you.